thanks so much for joining me again. And this is exciting stuff. And this is our last chance to understand what it is that Luke is trying to say in the series of readings we've been focusing on. And I'm excited to take you on a bit of a trip in looking at Luke's grand strategy plot. I'm observing and reporting to you what is the evident ripping tale that Luke wants to bring to a final fruition in the full sweep of his two-part drama, the Gospel and Acts of the Apostles. The story is taken by Luke as a means of conveying something important in this plot I'm talking about. If we take time to carefully and closely read and look for the clues that are actually there on the surface of the text, without starting to interpret or search for meaning, let me tell you, the fruit can be incredible. Some 60 words of this rather short story are devoted to Peter. He's described in more detail than even Jesus. He has the first speech in the story. Then the narrator does something that is so rare in biblical narrative, goes inside the mind of Peter and says he really didn't know what to say. That's revealing. And I ask you to flashback. I gave a analysis of the calling of Peter, James, and John in that chapter 5 material in Luke. And you may remember there that I pointed out that he addresses Jesus with this very unusual term, epistata in Greek. It gets translated as master. That's all we can do with it, and that's not too bad. The same thing happens here. He addresses Jesus as epistata. Just doesn't happen except in Luke. It tells us that Luke wants us to tie these two stories together. Peter there is being trained and tested. And the test is, can he step aside from everything he thinks he knows and follow what is being revealed about what God is offering the world? He says, I understand fishing. That's the one thing I do know. No, you don't. This is not the fishing we're talking about. He passes the test. So now let's look at our story in chapter 9. The same thing. He blurts out. He knows that when apparitions, such as is in the reading that we have for the same Sunday in Exodus, he knows that you build shrines when the divine penetrates the human and has intercourse with those who speak, with angels and apparitions of divine favor. Doesn't know what he's talking. He's overcome with glory. Typically of Luke, important things happen around prayer. Luke tells us the reason he's up in the mountains is that Jesus goes to pray. The second thing is that when the verb is used to describe what's going on between Jesus and the two greats, Moses and Elijah, it's an imperfect verb. That is to say, it's continual action. This is a serious strategizing conference. And because Jerusalem is mentioned, we know what that conference is about. Because just prior to this, Luke has recorded Jesus' first prediction of passion. There's your clue right there. Now, do all the law and the prophets, Moses and Elijah, Jesus saying, do they not all confer what God has sent me to do, which is to go and to demonstrate a new revelation from God that is different and higher and better and wider and deeper? And we can imagine Luke wants to say, yes, that is what must happen. And now I want to take you in this sweep of this loping, great, galloping plot of Luke's. And I'm going to take you to chapter 10 of Acts, because that's where it's all revealed, what this stuff about Peter is about. The vision to Cornelius that initiates the invitation to Peter is in the process of prayer. And as Peter goes up onto the housetop where he's visiting, he goes up exactly like Jesus and exactly like Cornelius to pray. And then comes the vision. And I'm going to skip right to the bottom line, where he says, I'm not going to kill and eat that which is unclean. That's the uncomplicated word. But the next one is, and common. That's the koinonia word, which should mean everything. Okay, fellowship. That's common. We are not common. We are set apart as a people. I won't touch it. And then comes a direct command from this heavenly vision. Don't you dare call common what God has made uncommon. In obedience, Peter goes to the house of Cornelius. When he stands up, before he begins his sermon, there is where Luke brings the final plot with Peter as the central pivot figure to its absolute final revelation. He says, now I get it. God is no respecter of persons, but everyone, and he goes on and to preach the sermon. This is Luke's fastidious artistry. In verse 43 of chapter 10, go look at it. All of this is in concurrence with what the prophets said was coming. Now the meaning is the next step. What the revolution and the revelation and the renovation of human perception is about is it's all wrong insofar as it suggests there are differences in God's access to godliness. Because humans naturally define themselves and their groups and their tribes and their clans and their religions and their structures and their politics. We do this. We define ourselves as different and therefore better. Where there is a scope of credibility and courage, the challenge to us always is to simply say that which we have inherited that divides and that we participate in is absolutely contrary to the revelation that Jesus brought of God's comprehensive inclusiveness. That's so powerful. If you want to handle, Luke gives it to you. Breakthroughs occur where there is earnest, open, seeking prayer, where people simply say, show me what it is that I am called to. Teach me to step outside of my comfort level. Teach me what I've inherited that may be keeping me from including any other that I meet as something other than neighbor. I just hope you take it away, and I kind of hope you may have a couple of sleepless nights struggling with this, okay? And I'll see you in Lent.